You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So the second shutdown, way worse for Seattle businesses. Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, I'm Sean Reynolds. I'm the owner of Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds & Kline Appraisal, and your host for this episode of the Seattle what are we hosting here? The Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Sorry for butchering that intro. That's just how some of those intros go. Let's jump on into it. Let's not worry about it. What else can we do? Seattle business owners say this lockdown is worse than last. This is an article from NPR, KUOW. Usually get some good human interest stories out of NPR, but some of these are business related. That's what we're covering here. During the second lockdown, many businesses are approaching the end of the line. Others say they'll come out okay. Most of the ones I know are pretty concerned about this lockdown because there's not been any real talk about second stimulus package. It hasn't been happening. Everybody's been focused on the election and that whole debacle. There was a time during Washington State's first lockdown when 𝑹𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 and her husband, Rodolfo Vega, were optimistic about the future of Plaza Garibaldi, the Mexican restaurant they own near Seattle Center. Seattle Center has the Space Needle. Everybody knows what that looks like. While restaurants had closed for dining, takeout had buoyed them so much that when they balanced it all out, they were only down 30 to 40% below their normal revenue. So they were doing okay. I mean, 30 or 40% down on revenue in a thin margin business like a restaurant, that is not where you want to be, but it is better than being out of business or closed like so many restaurants are right now. But this second lockdown has hit them much harder, slicing their revenue by half again. Sandoval says her customers have shown much more caution with their money this time around. So even though it feels like this shutdown, and Washington State went into their second lockdown beginning of last week, I think. I don't know when you're watching this, but hey, thanks for being here. Can't really do this without you guys watching or downloading or tuning in, because otherwise I'd be talking to myself, and I do enough of that already. Thanks for being here. So second lockdown started, I think, a week and a half ago. I'm shooting this the day before Thanksgiving. I think it happened the previous Monday it started. And compared to what happened in March, the dynamics, I think, are wildly different. People are more cautious. They're like, oh man, we already don't have a lot of money. These are consumers. We already don't have a lot of money from that first shutdown. We went back to work. Things are kind of getting back to normal. And boom, the second lockdown happens. It's just this double whammy. The phone doesn't ring. The tablets don't ring. You know, the online ordering system, they're just dead. And it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? A lot of small businesses, a lot of small business restaurants struggling on the struggle bus this shutdown. The Washington Hospitality Association estimates 100,000 workers could lose their jobs due to the latest lockdown. At Plaza Garibaldi, Sandoval tried to avoid layoffs, turning off heat in the restaurant to save money. Eventually, they had to let some staff go who'd been with them since they opened in 2012. Even this may not be enough. So what we're seeing here is people are making the most drastic cuts they can to get by, to survive, because nobody knows when some federal funding is going to come along. And I think people expect, this is a 4-week shutdown that Washington State is experiencing. And I know it's not nearly as hardcore as the stuff you guys in California are going through. That sounds like a nightmare. You've got, oh man, what do you have? You have a curfew? What are we, 10 years old? Yeah, you guys got to be home by dark. Got that going on in California. At least we don't have that, but the struggle is super real for a lot of businesses. So even laying off people, shutting the heat off, drastic measures like that, not working. What else can we do, Sandoval asked. That's the question. And if there's no federal stimulus, there's no real state stimulus, because the state rolls out a $150 million program. That's going to be like, I'm exaggerating, it's going to be like $4 per business. And I'm kidding there, but it's not a joking matter. But the joking matter is it's such a small amount of money compared to just the big scheme picture of things. Restaurant associations alone in the state of Washington figure they will lose $800 million in revenue during this 4-week period. So this 4-week period is supposed to go from November through December 14th, I think it is. And I think everybody is like, yeah, we're not going to open back up on December 14th, right before the Christmas season. Not really seeing that happening. Probably not a reality. And I think that's what a lot of these businesses are looking at. They're looking at my numbers are way, way down. Revenue is way, way down. I'm doing what I can, but there's no hope for income coming in. The only other option you have at that point in time is to shutter your doors and hope that you can open up again, doing whatever it is that you can do down the road. You got to borrow money, do whatever it is, but those are horrible positions for these business owners to be. What else can we do? Sandoval asked. Her idea is to reach new customers, but with no money to print ads, as they've done in the past. Sandoval's hoping for some luck. She's been posting specials on Facebook and hoping people notice. Trying to keep dancing. That's our next little segment here with another business. There was a moment during Washington State's first pandemic lockdown when Megan Wurzer, she's the founder and director of All That Dance in Northeast Seattle, she thought things were going to be okay. That moment came in June when some of her newer dancers danced their big recital on Zoom. So making adjustments, making things happen, doing the Zoom thing. And they did recital on Zoom in their own living rooms. Wurzer recalled that moment. I'm alone at home on my couch. I'm texting with all of my amazing staff. I'm looking on the screen at these 11 beautiful teenage dancers, these elegant ballet dancers who've just learned how to put this art form into function. And it brought me to tears, she said. And I also was so proud that we had prevailed. So they got it done in spite of the Rona, where you can't really be in the same room with other people. That's pretty cool. Fast forward 5 months to where we are now. The relief money that All That Dance received dried up long ago, and half of Wurzer's students have dropped out. Wurzer's business plan, which before the pandemic looked prudent enough that bankers lent her money to expand, feels ill-advised during the pandemic. She's up to her neck in debt and is hoping the bank will let her restructure that debt. So any business, most businesses out there have some form of debt, whether it's credit card debt or a big line of credit, or maybe a mortgage on a building, stuff like that. Most businesses have debt. That debt doesn't go away just because Governor Inslee says, oh, based on the data and the science, we need to shut you down. No, that debt keeps going. So hopefully people at banking institutions are working with businesses, and I've heard of some that have. But here's the deal. As a business owner, you signed a contract. So if you signed a contract and you're basically like, all right, I'm in this contract. If you break that contract, that's the deal. You can't really say, hey, Rona caused me to do this. And yet you can. And that's what you're doing. I mean, you can say that, but it's like, all right, you signed the contract. You entered into an agreement. There was no clause for Rona because we didn't know about that. But there's always something that can come along. But nobody has enough reserves to get through this second shutdown that we're talking about. That's what's happened, is people had enough cushion for one shutdown and then got some federal money in there. But this time, there's no federal money, not yet anyway. And we're heading into the holiday season when a lot of businesses do a lot of business. They're not open. Restaurants, they're not open. They're not doing stuff. Wurzer's journey, she's the dance gal, dance studio. Wurzer's journey matches the experience of many Seattle businesses over 2 lockdowns. An early sense of joy as community came forward to support this local businesses, followed by a sense of pain as the virus continues to disrupt the economy. That's what I feel like this second shutdown is. It's just a major disruption that people kind of aren't really paying attention to. My office is on a main thoroughfare here in Bellevue. It's called Bellred Road for Bellevue and Redmond, Redmond being where Microsoft is. And I've just been watching the traffic. There's just more and more traffic going on that road. It's looking less and less like a shutdown and more like any other day, any other business day. I think people are out. People are doing stuff. People are getting ready for the holidays. They're running around. They're going to work. There's traffic in the mornings now when I go to work, when I do my 3-mile commute to work. A lot of people complain about an hour and a half commute, or maybe 2 hours if you're in LA. I got a 3 3-mile commute. I have nothing to complain about. That's something I'm very thankful for this Thanksgiving. Very short commute, and it'll never be long. Kind of where I want to be. More relief money is on the way for businesses in Washington state, Governor Inslee says. The state recently announced a $135 million aid package. But Seattle businesses have been treading water for a long time so far. Some won't be able to wait for the lifeline. And guess what? That lifeline, I did a podcast in the last couple of days. That lifeline will last about a weekend. If you average it out between all these businesses, they'll pay for about a weekend's expenses. That's what you're going to get. So these are not lifelines. These are not things that people can count on. The federal money, those were some big injections. CARES Act, the PPP, that was real money. That's what we need to see again. Otherwise, these businesses are not going to come out on the other side. You're going to see a closed forever sign on their door, and that is not what we want to see. Next section is called adapting. Among those still treading water, many have stories of adaptation to share. James Lee, L.Y., owns Cafe Zingaro. He's lost business due to the shuttering of cultural spaces at Seattle Center nearby, but neighbors have continued to buy his coffee, and he's adapted to meet their needs. For example, when people stopped buying luxury sweet bakery items during the pandemic, he started featuring more savory items. Lee said the last pandemic, nobody knew what this virus was going to do, or if businesses could even get enough to hand sanitizer. This time around, people know what to do. People are more comfortable, he said, and they sort of understand all the protocols we need to take to keep as safe as we possibly can. But I think what people are doing is they're not necessarily going out to all these businesses they normally would have. They're going to like the bare necessities. We're kind of talking about additional businesses that in a normal environment, a normal economic environment would be very popular. We're talking about coffee. We're talking about dance studio. We're talking about other stuff. But everybody else is talking about a restaurant. Everybody else is so wigged out, the general population. They are going out and doing stuff, but they're careful with their money because we don't know how long this is going to go on. Washington State's supposed to be 4 weeks. I bet you it is 2.5 times that. I bet you we're well into, maybe we're even into February before we have this one come off. I don't see cases going down. I see them going up. And based on that, that's what our governor uses as data and science, even though it doesn't really necessarily correlate to the businesses that get shut down. But that's what we're looking at. A lot more cases. And that, I think, is going to reflect in we're going to be in this shutdown for longer. And a lot of these businesses, they can't hold on. Then there's Zach Cooper, who opened Cooper's Optique in July when the pandemic was in full swing. It's not how we envisioned this when we opened 4 months ago, he said. Cooper had only a few customers before opening. Fans from the days when he'd brought glasses to people's homes and to office parties. Since opening, he's leaned heavily into social media. With the artsy frames he sells draw lots of Instagram likes. He also hosts virtual art gallery events online that he says lead to several new eye appointments each day. We're reaching out to new clients that we wouldn't typically get if we didn't have the pandemic, he said. Since then, he said he's meeting his sales goals every month. Still, he's looking forward to the day when customers can gather in his shop in bigger numbers. So people are doing what they can. But a lot of these businesses, if this continues to go on, there is no way. Without income and with fixed expenses, you got utilities, you got rent, you got taxes. So many businesses rely upon the constant stream of income to cover their overhead, to cover all those expenses. And when you just, boom, chop that income source off, like a lot of these businesses have had, whether it's because they've been closed by the state, been mandated by the governor, or because of the economics of their business. Maybe they're a luxury item store or business or whatever. That stuff isn't necessarily going on right now. And so those businesses are in jeopardy, especially in the second lockdown. So I keep talking about this, but I think you really do need some federal money pumped into these businesses. Yeah, there's some businesses that are just a bad idea, and they're not economically sound, and maybe they don't have a place in the economy. But for every one of those, I think you've got 10 or 20 right now that are legit businesses that have been in place for a long time that are really struggling, because that is what happens when you cut out an income source. Can't pay your payroll, can't pay your rent, can't pay your cost of goods, can't pay all the other services and vendors that most businesses and especially restaurants need to operate. If you don't have money to pay people, guess what? They're not real excited to do business with you. It's kind of like in Popeye. Remember the cartoon Popeye? Popeye, what a great cartoon. The one guy who was always bumming a sandwich, I think it was, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a sandwich today. No, that's not happening in today's world. It's not a cartoon. This is real. You got to have cash and you got to be able to pay your bills. Otherwise, vendors aren't going to want to work with you. And I know there's a lot of vendors out there who are like, okay, these are my long-term customers. I need to keep these guys going because otherwise I'm out of business. So maybe I do float them a little bit for a little while. But far too long, if you get into this too long, you don't have some additional capital, guess what? You're toast. You're done. And that's a lot of what we're seeing is, not good. You just kind of have fingers crossed when you go to that store that or smaller business that haven't really maybe been to or only been there once during, since last March. And then you go visit and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope they're open. I hope they're not closed. And every now and then you go to one, you're like, damn it. They biffed it. They couldn't make it go. Just didn't have the cash flow to make it go. And whether that's there's so many different reasons businesses go under. It's like, why do marriages fail? Because two people couldn't get along. When the guy was a jerk or the woman was whatever. I mean, standard. Same thing with businesses. Somehow, economically, they're not viable. And at some point in time, the owners go, you know what? We're done. We're done. And I think right now there's a ton of businesses that are like, we can't hold on much longer. We're going to be done. But because this wasn't anything that we personally did, our business is not responsible for this. Because we got shut down by an outside entity, we're going to hold on. We're going to beg, borrow, and steal to keep going. So that's what you've got a lot of going out there. So this holiday season, support your local business. Yeah, keep going to Costco because you want to get good deals on, those licorice bins with 500 pieces of licorice. That's important. But if you can, check out your local business. If you've got like a small business that you're like, oh yeah, that's a cool place. I like going in there, but it's a little bit more expensive. Small business needs your help right now, especially during the holiday season, because so many small businesses make their living through the holiday season, especially restaurants, hospitality, and retail stores. Retail stores, surprisingly, shockingly, they've been open during our second shutdown here in the state of Washington because we need to be able to buy stuff for Christmas gifts. And based on the data and the science, don't forget that. And our state leaders, they realize that if we shut down all the retail stores, all the sales tax they'd collect that we need for our budget, because our budget's hurting, because we should really be chipping in some more money for these small businesses that we just shut down. Well, we don't have it in the budget. State legislators and the governor and the mayors, they're all hurting too, and they're all making calls, and they're all just like, what do we do here? Let's defund the police. And I kind of joke, but that is literally what's going on. But that's a much larger scale issue. But the issue right now is that while we are shut down, while we've got businesses shut down, there is no revenue. So hopefully for a lot of these small businesses, this shutdown will be only 4 weeks. And if you're in a state that has a similar shutdown, I hope your shutdown is similarly short, but I wouldn't count on it. I think everybody looks at the new cases, not the death rate, but the new cases, and also the threat of hospitalization, that going sideways, having too many people at the hospital. I think we look at that and everybody lives in fear and says, yep, can't have all these businesses open. Because even when they do open up, there's still a lot of people who aren't driving to work. They aren't doing their thing. They're kind of hunkered down. But I think that is lifting. I feel like that is lifting. So the sooner these businesses can go back, the greater opportunity they will have to stay in business and actually be a business. That is it for me on this one. I'm hoping for all those small businesses out there, for you guys, that this is a quick shutdown and open back up. Hang in there. That's all you can say. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep up the faith. That's all there is. You just got to keep going. All right, that's it for me. Again, I'm Sean Reynolds from Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.